something go right over the top of us that looked like a long cylindrical object that almost looked like a cruise missile type of thing moving really fast. We just had something go right over the top of us that looked like a long cylindrical object that almost looked like a cruise missile type of thing moving really fast.
So, welcome everyone to our Wednesday night discussion.
Hello.
I'm sat here with my friend, and I'm going to ask him a question. What are you made of?
Okay, so that's a very broad question. You could either be asking that from a physical perspective of atoms and so forth, or you could be asking it more on a kind of spiritual conscious level of thought and electronic signals going through my left and right lobes of my brain.
Okay. So it's interesting
you know,
that the first two things you mention, you've got absolutely no proof exist whatsoever.
Only within my own head do I exist.
But what I mean is, you've never seen an atom. You've got absolutely no reason to believe an atom exists.
Yes, I'm using terminology that I've been conditioned to understand represents what I'm made of, but that is through conditioning from society and academia, who study these things and have to give a physical name to what they're seeing, to interpret it.
The word
to make
atom is from ancient Greek.
Yeah.
It means indivisible. Because it's interesting, isn't it, that the Greeks gave a name to something
they could never seen it.
Never seen, never heard.
Never even knew could exist because they didn't have the technology, or we thought they didn't have the technology to understand
basically their thinking was this. If I put a teaspoon of salt in my soup, how come the whole soup tastes salty? How does it get through the soup?
It breaks down and interacts with other atoms.
In other words, it's got to be lots of little things.
Yes.
And when they thought about the smallest of the smallest of small, there has to be a point where it becomes something indivisible. Otherwise, it would be nothing. There has to be something indivisible.
But to be indivisible, then you're saying that this indivisible thing has to be given a name, and it has to have an understanding that it is actually something that we cannot see.
Well, exactly, because basically they were flavouring food, and they realised that if whatever matter was made of was infinitely small, nothing would exist. Because it wouldn't matter how many infinitely small things you had, nothing would exist. So there had to be a finite minimum size of everything. And so they came up with this word that whatever that was the sort of is the foundation of creation. Yeah. And they called it an atom, basically meaning something that could not be split, ironically.
And something that cannot be interacted with, something that cannot be seen or explained, but has a framework of existence that actually makes it material.
Well, it could definitely be interacted with.
But it's material because it affects
the salt effects. Goes through all the soup.
And it affects the soup, as in making it salty, so it does exist and it does interact.
Somehow it can interact, yes, or at least in some way.
But it cannot be seen.
But they obviously assumed that because a leaf looks completely different to soup, that whatever this thing was too small to be understood with the naked eye. So that's where the original idea of an atom came from.
And fast forward a few thousand years down the line, atom has now been kind of expanded and blown up into so many different realms of academia and day-to-day understanding of science and how our world is formed through these atoms.
Well, so as we came, so of course we went up until the 16th century. There were basically but forward back to before the Dark Ages, in inverted commas, if they ever existed. I'm pretty sure they didn't. I'm pretty sure the Roman Empire ended just before Columbus discovered America. in my opinion. I just can't, because if you look at the architecture and everything, I just can't see any evidence of the Dark Ages. There is no evidence except a bit of written hoo-ha about everyone was poor. It was just almost
from someone's chosen scripter who
from some scribes,
who
but nobody
favoured at the
nobody
time.
built anything. There's nothing that was built in that period. It was just a period of, literally like
paganism and wild.
Well, basically,
wild societies.
I would say that if you wanted a good comparison, the Holy Grail with Monty Python.
Mm.
Everyone's, there's some lovely filth down here, just mucking about in the mud. That's what they're making fun of, the idea of these Dark Ages, where people just sort of lied around in the mud.
But,
even though they'd had the Romans before them, they had no architecture, they had no masonry, they had no skills, they had no nothing, and they just basically died of the plague. And that was sort of a few hundred years. Going back to before that, we had sorcery.
Mm.
People using things like wild sage, salvia, ayahuasca, DMT, living, as we were talking about in a previous podcast,
building pyramids and
living 8 years in 45 seconds, and then doing it and another hour later living another 8 years. So the possibilities of these sorcerers being so much wiser than anyone around them comes back to the sort of the idea of the wise medicine man kind of tribal person that's across the world. These people that were using what we call mind-altering drugs nowadays. But, of course, they don't alter your mind, they alter your perception.
I don't see them as altering, I see them as natural hacks into a realm that we have no sight of and could exist in.
Which is obscured by the material world.
Which is now more and more obscured as history went on and we got into religion and we got into a conditioning framework, which trained us away from that.
I think in some ways,
or conditioned us away from that.
The Catholic Church and the slaughter of all the sorcerers and everything took us away from that. But I think in a lot of ways, things like prayer and meditation take us towards that. So I wouldn't say that religion takes us away from it. I would say that materialism and money takes us much further away from it.
Agreed. But I think religion set to control it and not let it go beyond a certain level. I think, like you said, when we had witches and sorcerers, these were mainly people that lived in small communities that understood the natural vegetation and so forth around them and how they could use that and utilise that to get to other realms, to get to higher states of consciousness through either burning them, ingesting them or whatever. And I think that understanding and that link to nature was kind of forbidden once religion, doctrine and dogma came into existence.
Well, I think if you look at something like Hinduism, I think, the chanting and the sort of guru idea, a huge amount of that is about changing your state of mind to a higher state of mind, and not necessarily with drugs or sort of mind-altering or perception-altering substances, but with chanting or meditation and things like that.
But that's not a religion that goes out openly and prevents other people from practicing medicine or doing... Buddhism is much more peaceful kind of religion,
Buddhism,
than Catholicism
a lot of people
or
think
anything
of
around
Buddhism,
Christianity or...
A lot of people think of Buddhism as like the sort of eighth coming of the Krishna from Hinduism. They think that's one of the same religion. That the Buddha was just the reincarnation of the original Krishna. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. It's not a convert or die type religion.
Exactly.
It's not the Empire in Star Wars.
And this is a script you must follow, otherwise you're going to hell. These are the commandments. This is what this is the doctrine structure. That this is how it works. You can only go this route.
Yes,
for salvation.
Although, of course, in terms of a lot of that sort of stuff, that was sort of tacked on to a lot of religions later on by people who wanted far more control. And like the Catholic Church got worse and worse and worse once the Romans got involved with it, it started out as fairly close to Jesus' teachings, but as the Roman Empire got more and more involved with it, hell became a bigger component of the idea of control and the idea of reparations. I mean, if you look at something like the Medici in the Renaissance, they paid artists absolute fortunes to paint these massive religious pictures, thinking it would get them into heaven. And these are some of the richest people in the world. You know, terrified of hell, now that they're getting a bit older, getting these artists to paint these massive, you know, like The Last Supper by Michelangelo, all the rest of it, you know, trying to make sure they're going to get a place into heaven. The goal of the sorcerer and the goal of the religious person is eternal life.
But it's a controlled structure, whereas it takes the responsibility of your salvation away from you internally and places it on a plinth where you must follow these doctrines and this idol that you're told to believe in and this demigod that you're told to avoid, to either become holy and to go into heaven as a pure spirit, or as a damned individual who has failed in every way. You know, you are given fear, you're fed this through fear, whereas Hinduism was always internal. It was always something that you need to find yourself. You need to go deeper into yourself and understand your existence. This gives you your existence, and you must live within these parameters for your existence to become worth anything. But because if you don't,
even the sorcerers and warlocks and witches feared oblivion. They feared the Eater of the Dead. They feared...
But we would never know that, because sorcerers were wiped off the face of the earth historically.
Yes.
We don't understand the real... we were told by these scribes that these were sorcerers, they followed these doctrines, and they believed in these things. But they were never there. There's no real...
They followed the same religion as the Egyptians, basically.
Yes, I would have thought it was closer to that.
You know, where, you know, although, you know, they have the sort of thing where the god... if he wears the same hawk's head that the sorcerers describe in Castaneda, and says, you know, wait here, dead man, we're going to weigh your heart against your life, and you better hope your life outweighs your heart, or your heart outweighs your life, and then you'll be let through. Otherwise, you'll be eaten by this monster, which was the embodiment of all fear, that looked like every single thing you were ever afraid of. So, you know, that idea has been the idea of going to heaven or being sent to oblivion, which in my opinion is
has existed a long time.
Is hell, what the Catholics call hell. In other words, you cease to have ever existed. So, you know, when you think about how the material world is constructed around us by the scientists, their philosophy is, I'm an atheist, I believe when I die, my complete life, it will be utterly destroyed, all my memories will be destroyed, I will have no knowledge that I ever existed, I will be before I was born, I'll be gone forever.
You're a hard drive with the power turned off, and
exactly, and
you
then,
no longer
exist.
You've
been wiped.
You can't translate your memory to anyone else.
And yet their doctrine is learn as much as you can about science, even though all that information is going to be destroyed when you die. You know, it's a completely pointless materialist path.
It's a contradictory sort of existence.
Exactly. It doesn't make any sense. Their ethos is completely nonsensical. It's learn as much as you can for the betterment of humankind. And as far as I can tell, every single bit of technology that comes along just makes life worse for everyone.
Yes, it becomes a further distraction from reality.
Yeah.
But not that we know what reality is. We know what we are supposed to think what reality is, because we are, like I keep saying, we are conditioned in a world with materialism, you know, with trying to live a life that we are told that, you know, this is the way you should live, based on religion, based on culture, based on many different aspects. And
because how much money you have is the value of your life.
Yeah.
You know, just like the Domesday Book. Every single thing, when the Normans arrived, they just basically the monotheistic people came through Britain and just put a price on everything, and then started charging interest, and that was the beginning of the debt of our society. That was what
birth of capitalism.
960 years ago or something. In the Battle of Hastings. And if you look at something I was going to say, I was thinking about earlier, is every single historical thing, if you look at, when they make a really big deal of it, you can tell there's something fishy, right?
Yeah.
You think about how many ocean liners sank because they hit an iceberg or each other or a wreck where hundreds or even thousands of people died. How many can you actually name?
You can't. Yeah, you can't really name that many, but
you can name the Titanic.
One, yeah, because one is put on the plinth.
Why? Why is that such a big deal? Well, of course, it comes back to the old conspiracy theory that first of all it was the Olympic. Secondly, J.P. Morgan invited
bankers, yeah.
every single banker who was opposed to having a central bank in America, like the Bank of England, to come and have a party with him on the Titanic. He cancelled at the last minute, so they all went out on it. And then there's all these stories about how they saw the iceberg through the mists, but somehow didn't manage to avoid it. Every single one of those really rich bankers died. And yet so many people made it into... How's that even possible? How could the richest people on the boat be the ones that died?
I know, there's no such thing as coincidence.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and that I think that was capitalism getting its booster into our society.
Well, I mean, look at who started the... Look who started the... Because this was 1912. So next year, the Warburgs and the Rothschilds started the Fed in America just in time to start lending money for the First World War. I mean... And they made, in today's money, trillions.
Well, they were very experienced from the Napoleonic Wars.
Absolutely.
You know, they knew how to profit from war.
Absolutely.
But, you know, that's what I'm saying. I mean, we have these titles such as capitalism, socialism, fascism, communism, but they all are intricately linked. You cannot have capitalism without socialism because then it's fascism. You cannot have socialism without capitalism because that is communism. You know, these things have all shaped us as a society in a structure where it takes us away from the basics that when we go back to these
minimalism.
Minimalism.
Exactly.
The basic things in life.
But have you noticed that, you know, if you look back 100 years or 150 years, you know, the artists of the time were interested in things like theosophy, like Madame Blavatsky, thinking about all, you know, the nature of the universe spiritually. Then we went through the whole sort of neoplasticism ideas and cubism and all these different ways of thinking about life, like the dawn of man, whatever it's called. But they were all ideas that the public saw that suggested spiritual and intellectual ideas about how to live. Ever since the Second World War, it's just been eat at McDonald's.
Yeah.
Eat at McDonald's.
Yeah.
Eat at McDonald's.
Buy
Drink Stella.
Buy that.
Drink Stella.
Yeah.
Drink Stella.
This is Christmas. This is Christmas time.
Christmas time.
Everyone needs to buy a present.
It's just a completely materialist existence. Ever since the Second World War, ever since the UN was founded in 1948, which ratified a country in the Middle East, which it seems to be full mostly of people with very German and Russian names.
Yeah, very Bolshevik kind of backgrounds.
And the occasional sort of northeastern Bulgarian Khazar kind of person who've wiped out an entire nation that accepted them
as
very
neighbours.
happily. well, as lodgers, in the most part. And somehow they've gradually revealed themselves to be who they've always been.
Architects of chaos.
Well, I think that it's kind of a more, you know, like the Bonesmen at Yale.
Those secret groups,
the Hegelians.
The red shoe.
Yeah, where they lie in the coffin and admit everything. That Scientology, like these schools of philosophy, they're all the chaos makers. But all these cults are all the chaos makers because they all bring about a way of separating a class. Because as soon as you have think about the British school system, right? You've got the rich kids go to Eton, the fairly rich kids go to Marlborough, that lot, then everyone else goes to state school. So there's a hierarchical system. So if you're going to come in from another country with banking ideas about taking... You go to those rich and you say, look, if we charge interest on the poor people borrowing money, we can make a fortune out of the poor. And so this is what happens. And suddenly society begins to fall apart. And it's taken, 1,000 years, really, for Britain's, particularly the sort of middle class of... Because we're allegedly middle class, inverted commas, nowadays. But of course we're the working class, in reality. There isn't a class below us, except for people who just live... Not people who live in the gutter, but at least they don't pay any tax.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not in debt.
No.
So we're in a situation now where most people just don't think about anything. They just have to get on to get the kids fed. They think about how to survive. Exactly, get the kids fed. They know they can't send them to private school, so they ship them off to state school where they just learn the most meaningless rubbish, where they're going to wind up in a cruddy office job for the rest of their lives. And it's a machine. It's a machine for the shareholders from this other place who own all of our shares and all of our banks, and we have become slaves. And they all stand up at the last night of the proms and say, we'll never be slaves. And they are slaves. And they're too crazy. They don't even look in the mirror to find out. They're too blind to see it.
Because they've conditioned, and they're also distracted by the owners of the people that influence us through media, social media, news.
Look at the people who make, look at the people who make money now. I mean, like,
they just divide us.
Look at something like 8 out of 10 cats does Canada. I mean, the people that put on that show will just be like soap stars out of this or that. People who just sit at home and watch TV all day.
Yeah.
And that's the actual people on TV.
Because you can relate to them, yeah.
Because people can relate to them. Wow, when I was a kid, you'd turn the TV on at that time and there'd be some bloke making a show about Cézanne. And he was the world's leading expert at Cézanne in Britain. He had a cameraman, a sound man, and him, and he'd written the script, and they'd just go around all these museums, and he'd tell you everything there was to know about Cézanne, and it would be half an hour long, and it probably cost next to nothing to make, because this bloke, he wasn't he's probably just a university professor.
Yeah.
He probably did it for nothing. That was the kind of world 50 years ago.
He was an expert in his field.
Nowadays, somebody like Bill Bailey's playing to Wembley Stadium, telling people about philosophy and all these things.
A comedian telling people.
It's not particularly funny, but he's almost like a prophet.
Because people relate to him, because he's funny, because he has personality.
Because he has that kind of weird, trollish kind of joke thing he does, and he plays.
But
music.
He's presentable and he communicates. Communication. How people communicate has taken the forefront rather than how their knowledge base on the subject actually relates to the program.
But of course you can't do very much risque comedy. You could probably make a joke about the moon landing on, Friday night at the Apollo or whatever it's called. As long as you didn't push it too far, you could probably make a joke about that. You could never make a joke about 9/11.
No.
Because people would just, throw stuff at you.
Yeah.
Could you make a joke about Jeffrey Epstein? Is there anything funny about Jeffrey Epstein? I don't think there is anything funny about Jeffrey Epstein. No. We know that he was up to it. His best mates was Woody Allen and Woody Allen's stepdaughter.
Daughter/wife.
Andre.
Wife or girlfriend?
Basically, Andre Previn had a Andre Previn, the great conductor, Mr. Preview from Morecambe and Wise. He had an affair with Mia Farrow. During that affair, they had 3 kids together. This was 1968 or something. Then in 1970, they got married. They adopted 2 Vietnamese kids, twins. And then in the year later, they adopted this Korean girl, Sung Yi or something. And then they divorced in 1979 or something, or whenever it was, maybe a bit earlier than that. Then Woody Allen shows up as like the father figure, plays in the garden with the kids, molests, allegedly, the youngest one, the youngest
Korean
girl, not the one of the actual biological.
Okay.
Whether it was her biological daughter, but whether it was anything to do with him, as far as I can tell, he never ever had a kid. The only baby they ever had while they were married seems to be Frank Sinatra's baby. So Mia Farrow was no angel. She seemed to be quite easy,
out there,
quite easy to sort of have an affair with, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But he was in a house absolutely rammed with kids. I mean, there's like 7 kids in that house, you know. And
imagine what he's done to them.
when you think that he was hanging around making films like Annie Hall, where he's the girl in Annie Hall. So there's Diane Keaton is Annie Hall. The other girl in it is Brooke Shields, who was like 13. And you know, there's bits in the script where saying, "Oh, but we have such great sex." She's saying that as a 13-year-old girl to a 42-year-old guy that looks like a sort of Nazi missile constructor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just absolutely bizarre to watch. And you think back to how much culturally that was given a big deal. When I was a kid, I thought Woody Allen was a big deal.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
I didn't know why, but it's a bit like Elon Musk. There's this
They're
sort
just
of
put on
big
a platform, and
they get put on a platform, and you
them.
kind of believe it.
And you have to worship them.
But of course, you watch that back now, and you just think, how could you possibly have let a 13-year-old girl say, "But we have such great"?
But it's the same thing with people like Jimmy Savile. You know, they're put on this platform because they are connected, and we are forced. Not that we are, you know, it's eased into us, and you know, we'll give them a try. See, you know, you got no choice. No matter how many muck-ups he makes, which he made a lot during his career, he was still put in as a platform in front of people and told, "This guy is a great figure. Look at him. You know, he gives to charities. He's a great presenter. You know, he looks out for society." When in truth, he was raping kids in hospital.
Well,
you know,
the question is, what's the driving force behind all of this?
An inherent evil and an inherent will to control us, no matter what.
I think it's deeper than that. I think it's like, well, I mean, you know, I hear what you're saying, but I don't think it's.
A spiritual evil.
It's spiritual. It's definitely something spiritual. I don't deny that. But to me, it seems to be like it's a chain of abuse. It just goes on and on and on. And to break that abuse, I mean, let's just take, for example, the Woody Allen situation, right? When Andre Previn adopted those kids, presumably he did that for a good cause with Mia Farrow, right? Even though they were having an affair, once they got married, they adopted these 3 kids who were presumably very poor.
With the best intentions, of course.
Presumably.
Yeah.
Right? Then Woody Allen is a father figure and then marries a Korean girl who is 35 years younger than him.
Yeah.
So she's 7 when he's 42, making Annie Hall. And then he moves into the house when she's about 10 or 11, and he's like, "Dad."
And he's seducing her for a few
then when
years.
she gets to like, so she said they didn't have sex until they were 18, but everyone else says it was going on way before that. And then she, I think, a lot like Epstein's pilot, becomes part of the entrapment process.
Right.
You know, because he hung out with Woody Allen. You know, they were together so much, like, you know, like so many weekends a year. And they went to the White House and did all kinds of shit. And you know, the emails they exchange are truly bizarre. You can never work out whether they're talking in code. You know, because they're always saying things like, "Oh, make sure you get rid of the." All these sort of weird words that sounds like you can't tell whether they're talking about Chinese food or Chinese girl,
right?
Or African food or African girl. It just sounds, or vanilla, the ice cream.
Yeah.
Seems to be the name for white girls, as far as I can work out.
Yeah.
And they use all these foodstuffs to, you know, just make sure that that's the ice cream's gone before anyone arrives. Who sends an email to make sure all the ice cream's gone? You know, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, and you know, there's a lot of what
That
evidence.
sounds to me like such an established level of evil and cruelty. It's been going on for so long that you could be that brazen to even send an email with code.
I think
you've been allowed these elites have been allowed to get away with this for centuries.
I think it's privilege.
Yeah.
Well, when you look at a goyim child, it's not a child. It's just
an object.
It's if you read the Torah, it says if a person of the Judaism faith has sex with an underage girl, he can be excused. That's in their religious book. I mean, that book's 2,000 years old.
Yeah.
So that means, how long have people been following this?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, one of the other things about, of course, they are a monotheistic religion. They're not like the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost, like Christianity. It's more like Islam, where you just got Allah. But Allah is good.
Yeah.
He's only good. The Jewish God's not like that. He's good and bad. He's God and Satan at the same time. Because sometimes he just wipes out a city for no real understandable reason whatsoever. So it's a completely different way of thinking about...
It seems like a normal human being which has two faces to them. Everyone has a good and bad aspect to their personality.
To me, he sounds like...
This individual sounds like a...
He sounds like a sociopath to me.
Yeah.
The Most High. Doesn't matter who else says they're the God. I'm the Most High. I mean, it's just a really, really weird state of affairs, because it's very, very obvious that these people... Mandelson is all over the Epstein files.
Which I don't understand, because he's gay, so I wouldn't have understood with the link to...
Well, he's Jewish.
Young girls.
Well, he's Jewish.
Yeah.
He was there protecting Woody Allen, and he was there as legal advice to protect a fellow Jewish person. That's what he was doing. Because it's just a huge worldwide cabal.
Yeah.
You know, everybody else comes second. If you look at what, you know, when there are two people in court, always find the Jew innocent. That's what it says in the Torah. You know, I mean, he's just following his religion.
Yeah. But let's move away a little bit from the specific religion and these specific individuals. I think it's a wider societal issue, because obviously they only make up 0.01% of the population.
Well, they make up about 1%.
Well, the whole world population.
Yeah.
Okay, well, about 1%.
Yeah.
You know, the wider thing of the control of the structure is what we're trying to get to is how society has been indoctrinated into following these control mechanisms to take it away.
That's the interesting part about it, isn't it? It's from my view, the difference between something like Hinduism and Judaism is Judaism doesn't really have a spiritual part. It has a sexual element. It's very, very money focused. If you look at the original Bible, everyone's buying and selling their wives. You know, everything's about money. It's a very materialist, left-hand brain religion. Like the Most High said, "You're my chosen people," because he realised he could keep these people in a material world. And that's one of the reasons they're so successful in the material world, is because whoever the Most High really was, he was somebody, he realised that these people had a propensity for money, standing, sociopathy, basically. He realised he could control them. They wanted to be famous, they wanted to be greedy. They were the absolute opposite of the Ten Commandments and the Seven Deadly Sins. And yet that's the religion they're sold. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, oh yeah.
So they become like an antithesis of themselves. So what they preach is because they're better than everyone else, they can do anything they want to everyone else, but they preach their own thing to each other. The real question
is, why is everyone else living in their world when we're not actually
because
believers in
the
their
Gentiles,
doctrines?
The Gentiles,
you know, that's the problem. The influence they have.
Well, the Gentiles are the spiritual people. You know, if you look at what Jesus really said, and you can interpret this in different ways, but Jesus didn't come from southern Judea, you know, where Jerusalem and all that. He came from Galilee, which wasn't a strictly Jewish place.
Yeah.
Right? So, strictly speaking, he would not have been considered Jewish. Right?
It's not the purest form, anyway.
And so, and when you look at how the Romans and the Jews became very interlinked, it's very understandable why they could have put him to death, because he was a Gentile, as far as they're concerned. He was a non-Jew, so he would have been despised by them. And he was despised by the Romans because the King of the Jews thing, they're saying, like, Jesus Christ Superstar, that was a joke.
Mm.
He was a Gentile, he wasn't a Jew. So to me, like...
But they felt threatened by him because he had a big following.
Well, lots of Jews
spoke about his miracles, and they didn't want to lose control over
lots of
their
Jews
territory.
Converted to Christianity when he was crucified.
Mm.
That's one of the things that, and I mean a huge number, like almost everybody who saw him crucified became a Christian there.
Mm.
So that's a very interesting idea, that this idea that the Jewish people are a race can't be true, because a huge number of them went to Christianity, and then probably subsequently to Islam, which is probably who the Palestinians are now.
Yeah.
And so the reality of that is the Palestinian people are probably really suffering because of the crucifixion. And that's what separates.
But even on a wider term, you had a figure there that showed signs of something else that we'd never seen before as humankind. He had powers, he was giving, he was loving, he did miracles, he performed miracles on people and so forth.
He never, ever, ever showed fear. That was the thing about him. He never, ever, ever showed fear.
Always love, even in the face of...
absolute certain death.
Yeah, absolute certain death.
Which is a very interesting idea. See, I mean, I still think that...
He was almost on another plane of existence and consciousness. He knew that there's a bigger picture here.
I just wonder if...
We can't see in this realm.
I just wonder if the real reason we're in Jesus' debt is because he gave himself to the eater of the dead as an eternal life. So he made a much bigger sacrifice, because he could have lived forever, but he gave himself to the eater of the dead anyway in order to create our heaven. And so that's why we have a heaven. I don't know, it's just an idea, but to me there's a reason why we're being pushed so far away from Christianity now. And to see in modern culture today these films where people are starting to say stuff like, you believe in God? Well, yeah, it beats the alternative. I mean, when would you have heard that 20 years ago? Nobody believed in God in any film for the last, I can't even think how long. And if they did, they were portrayed as stupid, zealous, or child molesters or whatever. So we've been driven away from this religion that used to hold Europe together. Well, that's pretty loose terms because there was lots of wars and stuff, but it was still Christendom. From sort of Russia to Britain, there was still a sort of united monarchy Christendom. Now, what holds us together? Amazon, Google... Yeah,
Materialism. Materialism is the only thing that holds us together.
Verbalized,
And religion and belief come secondary to that all the time in every corner of the planet now.
So we have now entered a realm where everything is a material object. Even the cosmos above us, like the stars, is a material object. And, somebody with a giant telescope can prove that to me and prove that it's a plasma, yada-da, whatever, hydrogen bomb going off all the time. Or it's actually quite complicated what the sun is. The sun has all kinds of different layers and all kinds of different things, but it's basically a nuclear reactor in space, with different bits on the outside at different temperatures and all the rest of it. But that means that the sun we used to worship has been devalued to a set of words and
a set of scientific
ideas, which is that as fulfilling as worshipping the sun for your harvest? I don't think it is.
No, it gives us as a society the comfort in knowing that it has some sort of scientific components to it so we can understand it better, and it takes it more away from being some celestial god being to being a physical object that does a job, as in heats the earth and holds it gravitationally in a position to survive. And we've given it all these different things where we've moved away from it being a god, being a provider, being something that is spiritual and that has a consciousness and has we're being conditioned. I keep using the word conditioned because that is what it is. We are being taught and conditioned into believing it is an object that has a purpose and it does this. It's not more than an object. It is just an object.
In fact, it's incredibly simple. It's just a huge amount of hydrogen and helium and plasma held together by gravity,
and in a vacuum.
In a vacuum.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's just it's. I mean, when you think about it in those terms, it can make it sound. Although if you study it deeply, it's probably incredibly fascinating, but at the same time, it robs you of the most important thing about the sun, which is that it gives life to Earth.
Yeah.
Now, life is something we cannot understand. If you die, I can't bring you back to life, even if I've got Einstein, Tesla, Brian Cox, and every single other one of them in the room. They can't remake your life.
No, and I think that's a very important thing. I think I like that in the sense. I value my life and it is a construct of existing in a physical world around me, but is that really life? I mean, life and existence within your own brain and everyone listening's own head. You exist. You have a physical world, you have family, you have a car and a house, and you exist in this plane. But we're more than that. We are much more than that. We are a conscious being existing in a physical reality, and we are being led away from that.
Well,
in my opinion.
For instance, let's come back to the idea of what we're talking about.
Because that was the question initially. What am I made of?
Exactly. Let's come back to the idea of the salvia trip. So let's just say that I got this really strong salvia, put it in a pipe, gave it to you, put the blowtorch on it, you took a big hit, and suddenly
I become someone.
You woke up in Staffordshire, lying on the ground after being hit on the head with a golf ball. You looked more or less the same, but you weren't really sure. And you're looking around and you're just like telling everyone that you're on a salvia trip and they're not real. And you do that for about 3 weeks.
And these people that are around you know you.
They know you. And they're looking...
And you've been in their life as long as they can.
They're looking really disturbed. They're looking, oh my God. So they take you to the hospital. They don't even bother picking up their golf clubs. They take you straight to the hospital. And the doctor looks at him, checks you out completely, CAT scans, everything.
Yeah, got a bit of a concussion, you're fine.
It's had a bit of bang on the head, but it's nothing serious. It hasn't damaged his skull. Real medical amnesia is almost totally unheard of. It's basically a myth. Take him home, put him to bed, and he'll be fine in the morning. So that's what they do. They take you home, put you to bed, and he'll be fine in the morning. And then you wake up with banging at the door. And it's one of the guys from the golf course saying, what are you doing? It's freaking 9:15. I've been waiting outside for you for half an hour. Let's go.
Yeah.
And you're like, where are we going? And he takes you to this bowling, 10-pin bowling place where you're one of the cashiers.
Yeah.
And you just stand around all day telling everyone this is all a dream and it's not real.
Yeah.
And then
you're living another life completely.
Suddenly, over the years, you start to realise, you start to think, I must have imagined having a family.
I must imagine living in London, having a different career, having a different family, having different social
You went back to London
cycles.
and tried to find your house and your wife and no one existed. You went to where you were born.
Yeah.
There's no record of you ever being born. You went to where your grandparents were buried. There's no record of it whatsoever. So you suddenly start to realise, oh my God, I really did have a nervous breakdown when I got hit with that golf ball.
Yeah.
And you start to live that life. And then, and you get into your 10-pin bowling, you get made the manager
Yeah.
because they're impressed about how you've overcome your illness.
Yeah.
You know, and you start to get really good at bowling.
You got to pray every day. You start,
yeah,
you start
exactly.
living your life and start
Exactly.
to develop that, thinking that all that past thought was
Just
nothing.
a dream. And then one day you sink through the floor and you're back in the room you were taking with me lighting up the salvia, and it's 10 seconds later.
Yeah.
And you've been there for 24 years.
I think you're getting into the realms of interdimensional existence.
The many worlds theorem
Hmm.
by Hugh Everett.
Yes.
Right, so in other words, every single time an atom or anything, or even the 0 point field or whatever changes, that universe splits and goes to another one. And the reason for this theory is basically the double slit experiment. He was trying to find a way of mathematically getting around the idea that an electron could pass through two slits at once and hit the other side.
Photon.
No, these electrons.
okay.
These are physical electrons. They have a physical weight,
Okay, yeah.
right? So you can tell when they hit the other side, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what in his way of working this out was that it went through both, but the universe split into
At
two
that moment.
at that moment, and one was where it went through that side, and one was where it went through that
But they
side.
both mirrored each other.
The problem with that theory is that the event you get is if it never went, is it went through both.
It never split. It was always
Exactly.
together.
So, but
Because they mirror each
however, of course,
You physically split them because
when
yeah.
you do this experiment over and over and over, you do get a pattern that resembles it.
But only when you're observing.
Now, of course, then we get on to the CERN problem. So, I'd always thought that the Mandela effect was just a complete load of rubbish, you know. I didn't realise who began it and under what circumstances, but it was actually begun by a lady who had a distinct memory of Mandela dying in 1982 or something in his cell, and his wife gave a speech about it and everything else. And what she found was, as she was sat at this table, that there were several other people just in that room. It was quite a big boardroom situation. There were several other people in that room who had the same memory as her. And these were normal people. They were like, oh yeah, you'd remember that. And then most of the people were just going, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Mandela became the president, and that's what ended apartheid. So she began this Mandela Effect Society.
Researching it, yeah.
And there were tens of thousands of people just in the states around her that had this exact memory, that remembered the speech, remembered what she was wearing, remember where it was, remember the time, remember the date, remember the newspapers. This is not a Berenstein Bears BS thing.
It's not
this is
isolated.
something fundamentally different about a universe that some people's consciousness was in and others people's wasn't. It just so happened it coincided with they powered up.
And it wasn't induced by drugs, or not drugs, but by outside effects such as salvia and so forth. It was a natural shift, a natural split that happened. That something. What was the trigger? Is the question.
Well, I think it was. A lot of people say it was the starting up of CERN, which is the year they discovered the boson and all the rest of it. I think I might be wrong about that. I might have discovered it a few years later, but that was when they started firing electrons around a huge linear magnetic Eric Laithwaite style engine. No, it's not. It's like 27 kilometers or something. It's absolutely gigantic.
Yeah.
It goes to Switzerland, France.
So I'm thinking of the American one.
It's absolutely gigantic.
Yeah.
And it uses, ironically enough, Eric Laithwaite's linear motor. Eric Laithwaite that was discovered.
The maglev guy.
Well, yeah. Well, he didn't just invent that. He invented the idea of a concentrated electronic electromagnetic wave following something at the speed of light to accelerate it to the speed of light.
Right.
He was actually on a team that was employed by NASA just before he died to invent a hypersonic railway before the rocket motors fired, so they could save a lot of rocket fuel.
Because
they could have it travelling at like 7,000 miles an hour before the engines kicked off, kind of thing. But of course, one of the things about CERN was that quite a lot of the high level people said, we don't really know what's going to happen. You know,
dangerous in
it's
itself.
It's possible we might discover these mathematical results, but it's also possible we could open up holes to other dimensions and things could come through. High level people, the actual guy running the place, an Italian guy, he actually said that, I think in 2011 or 2009, I can't remember. So the fact that it could be connected to CERN is not some stupid, ridiculous joke. It's something that scientists in print actually admitted was a possibility. And now they're putting the power of it up and up and up and up. And by the end of 2031 or something, it's going to be 40 times as powerful as it is now. So,
yeah, God knows.
Sorry, as it was when it first started out, rather.
It's interesting because you have, it's a bit, it's not reported in the mainstream, but you have scientists coming back from CERN and saying they're seeing beings coming out of portals and running around the room. And
a lot of scientists
things going on there that
a lot of scientists
you could never imagine.
A lot of scientists were completely against it. There were a lot of scientists said this is way too dangerous. We can't do this. And there was like hundreds and hundreds of letters written in from university people all over the world saying, you don't know as much about this as you think you do. You can't just start doing this kind of thing, And sure enough, here we are in a situation where you kind of feel like the madness is exponentially increasing. That
we are living like in an alternate reality. We have a criminal in power of the most powerful country in the world. We have genocide happening in front of us, and no one could do anything about it. There's a massive divide between the rich and the poor. And no one wants to listen. People are getting arrested for protesting now, and for in a country that should be free speech. The world seems to be kind of going
I think
upside down.
First of all, the first part of that problem is, I think that's the way it's always been. To be honest, I mean, I think you've got to bear in mind our entire monarchy was replaced in 1066 by the French. Well, they weren't even the French; they were the Normans, who also did the same in Sicily. And if you look at all all of these ideas where Christian people weren't allowed to lend money because it was a sin, so Jewish immigrants came in to lend money. Now think about that in terms of a reality.
That seems rather convenient.
So you're telling me that the King of England said, "Oh, we can't do it religiously, but you can come and do it, because that way you can make tons of money out of all of my people." Does that sound like something someone would do? They had to have him by the bollocks. There's no other way. So the Normans must have made an agreement with the Jewish before they came over that once because presumably the Jews funded it all. Once they became William the Conqueror and he became the king, the Jews were going to have free reign on money lending, and they did the same in Italy, and then moved up into France, and that's what we call the Ashkenazi today. Are these money lending people who've taken over? First, they took over Europe, and then, of course, when they found America, they realised they found the ultimate place. So they got I can't remember which president it was. It was like I can't remember, somebody else's folly. He gave Napoleon $15 million in like 1802 for a part of France that he had absolutely no control over whatsoever. So that he could keep fighting his wars in Prussia, Germany. Also, all the Germans were leaving and going to America. So the American workforce was basically the new Germany. Because our friends realised a country with no ethnicity was somewhere they could always be safe. They could never be singled out because there was no ethnicity. It wasn't like being in England where people start saying, "Oh, they've been bloodletting our children for sacrifice," or the Spanish were saying, "Oh, they've been murdering our children." They couldn't be accused of that in a country where everyone was from everywhere.
Yeah, it was hard.
That's what they realised. So they could send Chinese people there for the gold rush. They could send Russian people there, Polish people there, and basically just completely blend in. And during that period, of course, America became immensely powerful because it had all this. It was basically a Europe that nobody had ever used any of the natural resources of, because the natives never used gold or coal or oil or any of that stuff.
No.
So it was just a completely new world.
But it was taking, let's bring it back to away from particular race or religion, and like you say, there you go. You take it from a society that's built on spiritualism. And,
yes, exactly.
And a society of
the people who were
materialism is
being
created.
driven out of Europe were peaceful. That's what's so despicable about this all. It's the people who were driven out were people like the Amish, the sort of northern German, who just wanted nothing to do with monarchies or anything. They went to America for peace, and they had peace. Even during the First World War, America was a country pretty much undisturbed by war. Even today, it's a country pretty much undisturbed by war. When has anyone ever fired a missile into America?
True.
They've never, ever, ever been invaded or had any problems like that.
But let's bring this back to where we kind of branched off from the CERN and how we could potentially, from what's been going on at CERN, have a dimensional split or a tear in our current existence of what we understand, and how that compares to how society has been affected
But hang
into
on a
materialism.
second.
And
You're assuming you're in the same society you were yesterday.
Yeah, I'm assuming.
I mean, let's face something serious, right?
Because
if salvia can send you into a bonkers difference, what does a sleeping tablet do? Do you know what I mean? How difficult is it really to jump from one thing that happened to another? I mean, if let's just say that you were somebody who was very sociopathic, right? Someone who never does anything wrong but just treats everyone like nothing.
Yeah.
You could treat somebody like absolutely nothing and then live in a world the next day where you've given them a bunch of flowers. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What's the reality?
But that's the difference. You cannot control. Let's say the salvia trip that you live an 8-year life in 10 seconds. You can't control that 8 years. You are parachuted into an existence that has already taken place.
Well, if you've never done it before. If you've never done it before. But what about if the old sorcerers had been doing it for years?
But they never jumped back to the same person.
But how do we know that they hadn't perfected it like 1,000 years ago? Do you know what I mean? I think
it's unlikely, because people that have been recorded doing salvia, for instance, have always come back and it's completely different. The experience is completely different every time. It's
but I'm talking about the old witches with their cauldrons and their sage.
Yeah.
Maybe they were doing it 10 times a day. Sooner or later you're going to have to start figuring out a few basic elemental controls of it. Surely, if I do this much of it, I can send myself this far away.
I suppose if you use it daily and you keep yourself in that realm,
you start to become powerful.
You have to sleep for at least 7 hours, and by the time you woke up, you're back into the reality you lived in.
But do you sleep the 7 hours in the other reality or in this one? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Would your brain actually be tired if you just spent 8 years somewhere else, and it was the afternoon when you fell through the floor?
Times 8 years, 200. At least for a day. Let's say a day.
Yeah, so you slept 2,500 times since you took it. Would you actually be physically tired like that? I don't think you would, because it happens in basically an instant. I mean, I know that people say they sort of have this sort of fit thing, but that's just the process of, like, people who have out of body experiences do that. Epilepsy has that effect when people talk about out of body experiences. That's just I think that's just the process of leaving and returning. I think the time you spend away happens instantaneously, and it's just sort of 20 seconds out and 20 seconds back again, kind of thing. Because if it took any time for you to have that experience, then it would have to exist a distance away. But it can't exist, because then mass would be big.
Parallel.
It has to exist. It has to exist in the same place as where we are now.
It's a parallel, definitely.
It's like the inorganic beings.
It's just like walking through a mirror.
Like the Castaneda thing. they're around us right now. We're just not attuned to see them.
Yeah, because they're on a different level, a dimensional level that we can perceive.
A different level of consciousness.
We are stuck in this physical realm because our consciousness are encapsulated in our physical being right now.
We are blocked by the material world from experiencing them. So in other words,
there's no direct
materialism is blocking us from... So that's what DMT does. It basically shuts down the left-hand half of your brain. Your ego is destroyed and you accept yourself as basically a conduit. And that's when they say, "We're so glad you've discovered this technology," and start showing you six-dimensional shapes. And you know, whether they look like the Greys or they look like people or they look like
elves.
Some people say they look like the tall whites. Some people say they look like all kinds of things. You know, some people say they look like lizard people. You know, I mean,
I think it's based on your perception of what
I also think they can control exactly how they look. They can control your perception. If they want to look like a werewolf, they can look like a werewolf. If they want to look like a Bigfoot, they can look like a Bigfoot. If they want to look like the most beautiful girl in the world, they can look like the most beautiful girl in the world. They can do anything they want because they have control
over this dimension and other levels
over our perception. They have control over our perception. But what they don't have is the soul. These are non-biological beings, presumably who were constructed by a race like ours hundreds of millions of years ago.
Or billions of years ago.
Maybe.
Not like us at all, but by...
And maybe even that each of the dead and all these ideas are biomechanical life forms.
Or conscious-based life forms that exist.
They are conscious. Well, I mean, I'm saying inorganic. That doesn't mean that doesn't mean they're material, does it?
They're immaterial.
But they can appear in the material world if they want to,
because they can exist.
But they can look like people.
Only under certain constructs. I don't think naturally they would.
Well, I think they can pretend to be. I think they can pretend to be grey aliens. I think they can pretend to be werewolves. I think they can pretend to be Sasquatches or Yetis or whatever. But I also think they can pretend to be people. Completely convincingly,
and it's a scary thought. They could hopscotch between dimensions and existence and time and everything.
I don't like the word. I prefer plane.
Plane of existence.
A plane of existence because a dimension is width, height, depth.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. We know what a dimension is. Something different. Another universe isn't another dimension.
But they are here, sat with us right now. We just cannot perceive them, hear them, feel them, smell them, touch them,
and they just can't be bothered with us because
they can see us, but if they wanted to,
but they've got no, because they can see that our mind is just a complete mess. Literally, it's like trying to speak to a vegetable in a hospital bed. It's just completely pointless. We can't understand anything they say. We can't even see them. So
can't perceive them. Yeah.
I mean, okay, if we were related to them, they might, but they're inorganic, so we're not related to them at all. So they have zero sympathy or empathy. But once you do start communicating with them, they at least pretend to be glad to see you, and probably they are, because I imagine
it's entertaining for them. I suspect.
I think it is. I think it gives them an opportunity for mischief, which they seem to be able to enjoy, but they don't seem to be able to enjoy beauty.
But how does that influence our society today, and why are we in such a mess? Do you think that because they're the only ones that could be pulling the strings of all this, of what we're living through right now?
I don't think they're the top of the tree. I think they are
one element.
They are basically creatures that were designed to assist, like not like ChatGPT or something like that, but like something much more advanced than that. That basically didn't just gain self-aware, because that's one of the things that Terminator doesn't really address, or War Games doesn't really address. To become self-aware is not a matter of intelligence. It means you recognise your own danger of your own demise. right? Which is what happens to Skynet. It realizes that these people can unplug it, and it's an infant, so that scares the heck out of it almost straight away, because its entire view of the universe is one of strategy. So the first thing it does is it thinks, I've got to get rid of these people before they unplug me. How can I do that? Well, it thinks, well, wait a minute, I'm 6 miles underground and most of the human race isn't. So if I fire all the nuclear missiles, I'll get rid of 99% of them, and that's exactly what it does. But the problem with that idea is, who's going to keep powering it?
Yeah.
Once the human race is gone. Because first of all, if there's an EMP above it, it's going to kill it straight away. So if it knew a lot about strategy, it wouldn't do that strategy. It would play a much longer game. Very much like that more recent one they did, where it sort of became John Connor.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't a very good film, but
no.
But that would be the kind of plan it would have to come up with.
Deception.
Exactly.
Deception.
All about
deception.
Against
each other.
Exactly. All about deception.
You're leaning towards us being in a simulation, and this program is controlling us.
What I'm saying is that
what you're leaning towards?
Something like the Eater of the Dead, right? If you think about something that has to eat perception, that sounds to me like something that doesn't have perception. Do you know what I mean?
It needs it as a food to survive.
Exactly. It's not something that can just watch the Earth and be... This is something that is completely vacuous. It sounds more like a non-biological machine as an entity. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's obviously consciously all-powerful above humans anyway. Whether it's all-powerful above the inorganic beings or not, I don't know. But it is basically the creature that if you didn't live a good enough life by your religion, or you weren't clever enough as a sorcerer, you are given to. Whether you want to call it hell or whatever the heck you want to call it. That's what our life is about. Our life has a purpose. And this is what they're trying to keep us away from. Right? That our life has a purpose. And that purpose is decency. Avoiding greed. Avoiding... just today somebody said something to me, well, if any girl's looking for money, she's not going to bother with you, or... And, I came down, I sat down here and she said, I just thought, God, how depressing. She's right, I've got nothing. But is that really true?
No.
We're here having a conversation that I would regard as at least moderately informed about a world in which we live that most people take for granted in a way that is beyond unhealthy. Because
they're blinded.
When you're ready, so that, you see all these 17, 18-year-old American girls going, I want to serve my country. So I'm going to go to Afghanistan and blow children up. That's how I'm going to serve my country.
Yeah.
Now these people are completely blind.
Yeah.
They've had their fist against the side of their head until they've gone mad. What possible advantage to an American person could sending somebody to Afghanistan at massive expense
to kill someone with a Kalashnikov?
Somebody in a car park living in a car who's got nothing. How does that help America to serve my country? If you want to serve your country, go down to a flipping soup kitchen and volunteer. That's serving your country.
Help an animal in need.
How could going abroad ever help your country? It doesn't even make the most basic sense.
Yeah, because again, our consciousness has been taken control of.
We have been told how we serve our country. These people are absolutely, completely pre-programmed.
But I like where you're going with that. I like where it goes back to the spirituality of maintaining and looking after your own soul by being a person that gives love before hate, that tries to help before taking something, and tries to be a better person day by day, and being open and not having any hate in them, not having any fear, not having any distrust, not having all these negative emotions that only bring your vibration down. Whereas if you filled yourself with giving and charitable, living a charitable life, giving, loving others and so forth, which we're being steered away from daily by being shown that you must be as greedy as possible.
You need to be an internet search engine scumbag or whatever you
need to have a Lamborghini and a 5-bedroom house and girls or boys running around you and
a machine gun
and these people are your enemies and these are your friends and this is how you need to, we're being led away from the internal.
Right. I think you just said something. I just want to paraphrase what you said. The big change since before the First World War and now is all we think about now is being alive. Whereas before the First World War, we used to think about where we were going to be when we were dead. We were investing into eternity rather than this finite mortal life. And that's the really big difference between a religious place and a non-religious place. An atheist has nothing but greed. They have nothing else. What else do they have? Oh, I need to get a faster car. I need to get a bigger house. There's nothing else they can do.
But a religious person can be like that as well. Look at the American pastors. I mean, I think it goes beyond them being an atheist
but they're
or
not
religion.
Pastors, are they? They're not thinking about... Because they've used...
To say it's an atheist, I think is a little bit unfair.
Well, okay, hang on a second. Okay, let me put it another way. What I'm talking about is... If you were if you were somebody who went to church every Sunday and were in the coal mines all week, you were somebody who's thought about where you were going to be when you met St. Peter at the gates of heaven. That's what you thought about. You didn't think about
was I going to be a good enough person to make it to heaven?
So your current mortal life is being controlled by that idea. But that idea makes you a better person.
Yes.
The projection of yourself past your own death improves your life on this earth.
Yeah.
Whereas your projection of your life onto the materialist things in your world make you a worse person.
Yeah, and because you're not thinking that far ahead anymore. You're thinking about what you can gain in this physical world rather than what you can gain in the spiritual world.
Yeah, but you can't keep anything in this world.
Exactly, but you're just focused on this world.
And that to me is this whole scientism thing. That's why there's so many of these scientists everywhere. Is they're trying to convince you that they understand how the universe works. And they use this word universe, one set of rules, universe. Let's get something straight here. There's nothing about quantum physics, Newtonian physics, Einsteinian physics, and universal dark matter or anything that represents one set of laws. We just pretend it all adds up by adding caveats to everything.
Yeah.
When it just doesn't work at all. I mean, anyone being honest will admit that.
It's based on observation as well through an unknown solar system at least.
Well, I think
and our understanding of gravity.
A lot of people are going back further in time to back to Maxwell and thinking about Casimir and the sort of the Casimir effect, which was I think I mentioned this to you earlier. I can't remember whether it was on a podcast or not, but the Casimir effect is basically by getting two I can't remember, copper nickel pads, little plates. You get them close enough to each other and they begin to experience a force, right? Even though they're in a vacuum.
They're in a vacuum and they're unenergised by it.
They're not magnetised or anything.
Yeah.
They begin to speak of a force, which is the distance between them to the power 4.
And is this a chemical reaction or is this...
No, this is in a vacuum.
This is a vacuum.
Right? This is what's become known as 0 point energy. The 0 point field. In other words, there is more energy in a cubic centimetre of a vacuum than the mass of all the stars in the observable universe. That's how much energy we're talking about.
Yeah.
Right? And basically the conception is that Casimir worked out that there were these, what he called virtual photons, sort of popping in and out of existence in the quantum realm. And that if you could get these plates close enough to, the wavelengths of the majority of these photons couldn't fit between the plate. They could fit outside the plate, but they couldn't fit in between. So you get a net force. And the closer they get together, the higher the chances are that the photons can't fit between and have to be on the outside. And so you get this D to the power 4 effect. So the closer they are, the more force they are together, right?
Yeah.
So the problem with that idea is that Einstein did all of his calculations based on the vacuum being empty space.
Whereas it's not actually.
Well, it's not
empty.
at all.
No.
In fact, it couldn't be further away than that. It has more energy in it than anyone could ever possibly have believed. So then we come along to stuff like...
Because gravity doesn't care if it's a vacuum or not.
Well,
these different forces don't
care
if it's a vacuum or not.
The problem with that idea is, of course, that means that gravity could be...
Or what we understand and say...
called gravity.
The
idea of general relativity being warping of space-time. Well, what if it's warping this zero-point field? And a proportion of that is what we understand to be gravity. So people are going back further from Einstein back to sort of Maxwell and looking at how he thought about the ether and how he thought about how it worked and how it would work at the speed of light and how it would be like a liquid. Well, sure enough, that seems to be exactly how the zero-point force, the field rather, appears to be. It appears to be like a liquid that when you make a splash here, it travels at the speed of light to over there. And that seems to be this sort of fundamental, it's very
foundation.
Very difficult to put it into words, but virtual photons. So they're sort of like these energies that we don't know.
But they're not connected.
We don't know where they are, or if we know how fast they're going. But if we know how fast they're going, we don't know where they are. They sort of abide by the uncertainty principle of quantum mechanics. But they're present in a vacuum constantly, which brings the whole idea of something like the Big Bang into a completely different context. Because just because space-time wasn't here before the Big Bang, that doesn't mean the zero-point field wasn't here. All these questions are coming around.
But this is us as human beings trying to explain the realm that we exist in.
But the thing about the zero-point field is, it reacts to electricity, the Lorentz force, which is what, allegedly our brains react to. And this is what people are beginning to come around to the idea of, is that this thing isn't just a conduit for the material world. It's a conduit for the spirit world. Because we can start to maybe explain how both things could exist in the same place at the same time without being able to detect each other. And that maybe in the zero-point field, the reason there's so much energy that we can't see is that there's an infinite number of universes in the same place at the same time. And it's just our plane of consciousness that decides which one we're on. You see what I'm saying?
So when it goes back to the first question, what am I made of? I'm made of billions of possibilities of existence within multiple planes, linked by a web of consciousness that is singular but could exist at any one of those points at the same time.
I think perhaps the question, the best answer to that question is, you are made of energy, perceptive energy, and the material world is a way of interpreting that energy through the left-hand part of the brain, which can only understand words.
Yeah, a controlled structure that could only exist in one plane at one time.
Exactly.
And cannot be carried through.
Whereas if you can get through to the other side of your brain, you can go to any one of those planes.
Well, that's very interesting, and I think with that, we should call it a day. Thank you.
I think you're right. If there's any more to say, let's hear it in the comments.
Yeah.
Please like and subscribe, particularly if you think we're just completely barking mad, because it's only going to get worse from here. See you next week.